Alright, so here I am. I've got my 2008 ZX10R. Um, yeah, the seat's off of it. Well, what happened was I was riding along, went to the wife's work, and then what happened is I was driving along and I noticed that it started to fire kind of differently. I lost my lights, my dash, my indicators, and then I lost my headlight, and I tried doing my blinkers started to fade out. So it was acting just as if my alternator in like a vehicle went out. I had juice, I was running, but I was losing juice. And then eventually it sputtered out and stopped. So I tried to start it up, turned it off, turned it back on, made sure it was neutral, clutch and everything, and it just went. So I sat there for a little while. Long story short, I was able to get it started 3 more times. I tried push starting it. Well, if the battery's dead, since it's an electronic fuel pump, I wasn't getting any fuel, so that wasn't going to work. So I ended up pushing the bike a good distance. I was only about 4 miles away from home, so throughout the whole mix, it took me an hour and a half to travel that. So anyways, I did some diagnostics. First thing first, I charge up the battery all the way. I've got a trickle charger that's hooked up. If I'm not riding it, especially a week and a half's time frame, I always put it on the trickle charge, keep the battery maintained. I charge the battery back up. The bike starts up. It runs. Everything works. So the next thing is okay, the battery, it's holding a charge. So I tested it with my voltmeter, and the battery is holding like a 12.7. Well, then the next thing to troubleshoot was, it's got to be the charging system. So looking at the maintenance or the service manual, there's 2 things that incorporate into the recharging system, because everything else seemed to work fine, is the rectifier regulator and the stator. So I don't know if I can get a light down in there or if you can see, but my battery died. So right here you can see where the regulator rectifier is. You can see the gray connector, and the stator is actually plugged in at the moment. So there's a bolt that you can just barely see it right there. That is the toughest bolt in the world to get to, without having to take the whole complete bike apart. But the regulator rectifier, sorry, the garage is a mess, is this deal right here. What happens is the stator generates your juice, which is AC. The regulator rectifier has diodes in it that controls the flow and changes it to DC, and then it recharges your battery and blah 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 blah. Well, the stator's right here. It's inside here. It's a metal coil. You can look it up, Google it. I'm not going to go through and explain it because I'm not that good at explaining them. But anyways, this is my new one. So I troubleshooted the regulator rectifier and it was good. Well, the stator has 3 phases. You check this one and this one to this one, and this one to this one, and they should all be the same. You need to check your instruction manual on the appropriate measurements and stuff like that. And of course, I got a gasket, so when I take it off. So, anyways, start up the bike, ran it, and then was checking the voltage that was coming out through here. And I put this around it because I knew there was volts, supposed to be coming through there, and so just kind of keep from getting shocked and stuff like that. And I tested them, and it's actually this phase right here, the number 2 and number 3. When you check them, got very, very low volts. Actually, it was like 1.2 volts versus 40 on the other ones, or 3840. So anyways, I first initially was checking with this Harbor Freight cheapo. I mean, it works, it does well, but I I had to end up borrowing one from my buddy Walt at work, and this one actually is a higher grade, higher duty, better measurements. So I wasn't getting accurate readings on this, so I had to resort to another multimeter. If I would have just stuck with this one off of these readings itself, I would have ended up replacing the rectifier, and then come to find out it ain't the rectifier, it was the stator. So that's what I determined the problem was. So in a sense, I took off the lower pieces of the plastic, which one here and one right here, so I could take the seat off. I had to take out my overflow tank, which is going to be a screw here and a screw here, and I'm just going to have to move it out of the way, because then I got to take out all these bolts, and then there's a bracket with something else attached to it, but I'm not exactly, that's the bracket that holds the plastic fairing on, so I should be able to get around it. I've watched a couple of YouTube videos, but I have noticed that they don't really have one on a ZX10R Stator one, so that's what I'm going to do. It looks like everything will clear the hose, but we will see. It looks like I have to take out this bolt as well, but I'll go from there and we will see what it looks like once I get those bolts off. Okay, so I've taken the bolts out and I lay them in order clockwise. So if you go from left to right, like you read, and clockwise from the top hole, which is right here, all the way around, that's how they're set in order. Now, as long as the bolts are the same size, which most of them pretty much are, it doesn't really matter which one goes in which, but just to make sure I don't mess it up, that's what I did. So anyways, you want to lay down some newspaper in an oil pan, because you will lose a little bit of oil. As you can see, there's some on the paper, and you could take this plastic off, but I don't like taking it off. I like to leave it on, so I work around it. Anyways, so I got all the bolts off, and I just took a rubber mallet and just kind of tapped on it all the way around to break it loose, because that gasket's going to be sealed. So one thing that I kind of learned was I should have pulled the wire out, because it's still up here, which it's kind of hung up as it winds around in there, but I'll get to that in a minute. So what I'll show you is, this is how you can tell the stator is bad. Just being careful that you don't slam it around. As you can see, the old gasket, the old gasket's still on there. It looks like it's still in pretty good shape, but I'm going to replace it anyways, because I'm going to break it once I pull this grommet out. Here's the stator. As you can see, what does not look right? That area right there, that is burnt. That is why my charging system's fried, because it's burnt. So let's see if I can't get it to focus. It ain't gonna focus worth anything. So, but anyways, this is the old stator. So what'll happen is I'll take those 4 screws out, finish rerouting it through, pulling it out, then I'll replace that stator, replace the gasket, and then I got to get some of that blue gasket sealer so I can put it around the grommet so I don't lose oil and it doesn't leak. And then looks like I just do some minor cleaning up, just removing, as you might be able to see, where some remnants of the gasket still left on there. Just go around, clean it up with some fine grit sandpaper, get this old one off, and get the new one put in. But first off, I gotta get this one up. So I ran the wire up through, it came out, and took the stator out. There is a bracket that goes down right in here. As you can tell, there's a little hole and there's a pin right down in here that slides right into that groove that helps keep the stator in there. Helps keep the wires from getting up into the action of the magnet as it's sitting there spinning at an extremely high speed. Now, just taking a look, looking if there's anything else worn in there. It looks okay, but that's a gigantic magnet, so any metal you get to it, it attracts and pulls it in. I've got some blue Loctite removable, so when I go to put these bolts in, I'll put Loctite on the threads so that I can thread them in there and torque them down to specs. I also had to run and get some gasket sealant, because what you're going to want to do is where this grommet is right here, this is the new one, this is the old one. Poor lighting, I apologize, but you got to put a gasket sealant around the grommet so it seals it, so you have a complete seal. Now here's the connector of the old one, and then here's the connector of the new one. They're identical. As you can tell, the wires are more bare on this one versus this one. As you can see, which ones are bad and which ones may still be good. But it actually started to burn out those wires and the coating. This is the back side of it. It's pretty well gone. So this actually sits into the bike like that. Then the magnet rotates around the outside, which then generates AC volts, and then it goes to rectifier, regulator rectifier. Here's the old gasket. It's kind of interesting because when I took the gasket off, it actually stayed in one piece. It's actually like made of a metallic metal type material. Now you can't hear it, but I can feel it when I bend it. It kind of pops back and forth as like aluminum does. So it's looks like more of a metal style gasket, or maybe it had metal support in the middle of the gasket. But anyways, I've got a new one right here, so I will get it cleaned up. Take some sandpaper and just kind of clean off all around the edge. Shouldn't take that long. Clean off where the grommet goes so I can get a good contact. And same thing around stator housing. As you can see, there's some icky stuff there. Get that all cleaned up so it's all nice and shiny, and then I'll put the gasket sealer on there. You're supposed to hand tighten it, let it set for an hour, and then you tighten it down to specs. So I'm going to go ahead and get it cleaned up, and then get the new one put in, and shortly before I put it together, I will see you then. Okay, so I've got the edges all cleaned up, nice and shiny, as well as on the bike itself. I put the new stator in. Actually got the bracket back in there, and I put thread lock on it, which I should have put the lid on it so it doesn't dry up. And it's probably not going to dry up, but anyways, it's my retardedness, I guess you could say. So anyways, one thing that I ran across when I was doing this, let's see if you can't see it. You can see this is where the upper piece and lower piece come together, and there's a little bit of buildup right there. That's where they use gasket sealer, as well as right over here you can actually see the little split. So I'm going to make sure I put gasket sealer there just in case there's a small hairline crack and I don't want to lose oil or have oil dripping through. So cleaned out the threads after sanding it down. It took me about 30 minutes to do it all. And then what I gotta do is I was told to use blue gasket. Put Permatex. Well, I got Permatex, but I got the Ultra Copper. The real only difference is this is high temp, 700 degrees. Gasket seal meets or exceeds OEM standards, and I'd rather exceed than just meet. But and it was only 50 cents more than the blue, so you know, why not? Overkill, rather have overkill than underkill. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to use thread locker, lock those bolts down in there, and then I'm going to put the Permatex right around. I'm going to pull the grommet back out, put a nice little 1/16 bead in there, put it together, then I'll put the gasket on, which is right here. I'll take a light coat of oil and just go around the gasket, both sides of it, to get it prepped, and then I'll line it up on the holes, and then just slowly put the cover back on, and it should just easily slide on. I'm going to put some Permatex right there in that little groove, and then just be on the safe side, put some right there as well. The instructions with the Permatex is once you put it on, you're supposed to hand tighten the bolts, let it set for an hour, and then come in and torque them down to specs, and then they should be good to go after 24 hours. Let it set for 24 hours before you start getting on it and running it. So this time tomorrow I should be able to run up and down the street. So I'm going to go ahead and get that going, and I'll see you once I get it all kind of together. Okay, so I have got the bolts in there hand tight. Basically what I did was I put Permatex in those two spots, and I put it around where the grommet goes, and then I put the gasket on because there's two pins or two dowels that help you line it up. Well, I kind of pinched myself. You can't really see it, but it's magnetized, so when you get it close enough, it goes, and that kind of messed up the gasket and everything. So I had to pull it back off, realign the gasket, and then slowly put it on, and then it locked on, magnetized on. So the gasket, I went around and made sure that the gasket was fairly even all the way around. And then what I did is I did every other bolt. So I started with this bolt, then this one, this one, this one, and then filled in what was left. Well, then once I got them kind of hand tight, as I started getting down the bolts, then it would readjust, reset, just like a car tire. Anything that you're tightening down more than 3-4 bolts, you should do kind of in a pattern type deal. That way you're tightening it down at the same time. Because if you tighten one down and it isn't properly seated, you could break something, snap a bolt. So they're only hand tight right now. I am going to let it set for an hour like the Permatex instruction says, come back in an hour, which will be about 11:15, and tighten them down to torque, let it set for 24 hours, and should be good to go. Alright, see you shortly. So it's been roughly an hour. It's 11 something, 11:15 in the morning, so, or at night, sorry, at night. So I'm going to go ahead and just tighten these down. You don't have to tighten them down too tight. The actual spec is 89 inches per pound. So, and with this being an aluminum case, you know, you don't want to crank down on too much. And I know you're probably going, what? Why aren't you using a torque wrench? Well, unfortunately, the torque wrench I have is a 3/4 inch, and it's too much. So I vaguely can remember the feel when I was taking them off, and they should have been torqued down to that spec. So what I'm just doing is I'm going to go back for that feeling of what I remember. And I went around them all. Now I gotta sit here and wait for 24 hours before actually starting it up and getting it going. So at this point in time, I think that's too big. Put it onto my tablet. So last thing I gotta do is just actually run this up through and around, and I will do that in the morning. Tomorrow's the kids' first day of school, so I'm hoping to get up early enough to see them off to school, and then by tomorrow evening the wife and I should be taking her out. But before that, gotta check to make sure the charging system's charging, and make sure the battery's good, and take it for a test drive, make sure it's operating correctly. So I will see you in 24
So
hours.
I've checked it, it's not leaking any oil. Now I've already ran the wire up through and connected it to the regulator rectifier. Now the next test is to see if the battery is charging. So I've already started up the bike to let it warm up, just kind of speed up the process so we're not sitting out here any longer than we have to. So the battery's been sitting on the trickle charger pretty much the whole time I've been working on it and while I was sitting in the garage. Right now it's on alternating bolts, and I change it over to direct, which is a solid line with broken line, and right now it says the battery's at a 12.5, which is good. It's a battery. So what I'll do is I'll start the bike and then rev it up to 4,000 RPMs, and we should be getting a reading of over 14, but no more than like 15. So go ahead and let it do its work on the indicators. Alright. Alright, as you can see, I'm actually getting the charge at 13.27. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and rev it up to 4. Well, that tells you that 14.6, yeah, it's charging. So the problem's been fixed. So what I'll go ahead and do now is put the two plastics back on there, a couple screws, and ready to go. Since I kept getting oil and stuff all over my hand, I'll probably just run the chain cleaner, clean up the chain, and re-lube the chain. Thank you very much for being patient with me on this, and good riding, and thank you for watching. I do all kinds of other little knick-knack things, so if you want to subscribe, you can subscribe and see what other little goofy do-it-yourself projects I do. Alright, thanks, bye.